Welcome to the Linux Saloon. We made it, finally.
Yay.
We did it.
It's a place to discuss tech, open source, and where Linux is always on tap, even if it is on tap a little bit late. Each show will have a talk about a Linux project, such as a Linux distribution, a desktop environment, could be an application, could be, anything really, a desktop. Yeah, I think we should do a desktop environment. I was just thinking about that. We also chat about news or a variety of topics from the community. Anything that is Linux, tech, and open source related is on the table for discussion. With me today, I have Rick, Jinda, Colin, and Schykle, and I'm Nate, a Linux fitness and vintage tech enthusiast with an almost unhealthy obsession with the OpenSUSE project. On the docket for today, we're doing a distro exploration of Clear Linux. We'll check what's on the menu for next week. News Flight, a community free pour, featuring Sravan, if he shows up. I'm hoping. He said he would. That'd be fun. And a last call. But first, what have you been doing in Linux or tech? Schykle, you said you got yourself a new laptop, and it's running Silverblue. So do tell more about what this laptop is and why you chose Silverblue, and if you're having any issues with the firmware updates.
So this, the color of it, I think alone. So it's like the sky metallic blue.
Ooh, very nice.
So it kind of makes sense that I would run Silverblue on it. After all,
it's silvery
pure
and blue.
form, no function. This actually came in the mail today via FedEx. So the box was only a little bit destroyed. And the first thing I did on it was actually erase the Windows via the UEFI. I didn't even boot into Windows, which I would normally do to do firmware updates. Instead, I booted straight into Fedora Silverblue. And part of the updates that are supported for Dell laptops are firmware. So via the LVFS, which is the Linux firmware vendor system, or Linux vendor firmware system. Things like Telemetry OS, Fedora, Pop OS, and I think some other stuff do it as well. So you can actually get firmware updates for certain laptops, including ThinkPads and stuff. So I did it, and it hasn't crashed, and so far everything is working. So it's definitely a very good start, and I look forward to seeing how it holds up as updates come down the chain, improvements for 12th gen chips, because it's got that weird big little architecture. So
Oh yeah, that I'm very interested in knowing more about for sure. Do you know how that's going to like power wise? It seems like there'd be a lot of electrical advantages for battery usage with that.
yeah, theoretically it should improve battery life and just efficiency as a whole. Something that I was worried about was that um, something that's available is like performance modes, and in some laptops it's just not there under Linux, just because it depends on the OEM and like how weird their firmware is. But it looks like it is supported here, so it has the power saver, balanced, and performance modes all available. And um, so that's usually a good sign that things are working as they're supposed to. But also somewhat semi-recently, the sort of Linux equivalent to the Intel Thread Director. It's essentially what controls the optimization of like the OS processes between like the efficiency cores and the performance cores. So that's in the kernel. There's like a Linux version of it sort of baked in. So I'm going to be doing some sort of like pseudoscientific benchmarks, just sort of comparing that to kind of like what I saw with my previous gen laptop, which had an 11th gen i5 in it. So kind of see how that does.
I would be interested in finding out if you could pull any. They wouldn't be very scientific. They wouldn't be even pseudoscientific. But just using it and seeing what kind of battery life you get out of it, even projected battery life, because I know, at least in Plasma, it can give you like there's an energy usage thing. I'm sure GNOME has that too, and others. But it'd be interesting to see then if you could do some projections and say, is the battery life what I would expect? I mean, whatever the marketing, I'm trying to think of a word that's not inappropriate. The marketing
Material.
garbage material on something. There's another word that I had in my mind that may or may not have been
Propaganda.
Propaganda is a good word.
Yeah.
That was there that would shoot, lost my train of thought. Like where it lines up. Like for instance, I have it's a EliteBook 840 G7, I think, and I get about 8 to 10 hours ish of battery life, and it's actually about 80% of life like in the battery right now. And so I still get really good battery life, unless I'm running VMs or whatever else, unless I'm really pushing it. So I'm very impressed with that. And it's obviously less than what HP says it should get, based on the marketing stuff. So I'm interested in
Marketing
seeing,
is always.
yeah, it's like if the screen is off and you're running DOS, I don't know. I don't actually know how they benchmark it, but
Some unofficial claims state that you can watch Netflix for 12 hours on this laptop, which is both impressive and highly unlikely. So I'll definitely have to do some testing.
I think the impressive part is someone could watch Netflix for 12 hours straight. That's really the impressive part. Yeah,
I'd fall asleep.
I would too. Now I have done the dumb thing of I thought my computer was asleep and I put it in my bag, and the next morning I wake up and it's got like 2 hours left of battery life, and I'm like, well, what the insert expletive happened here that this happened? It was after a Linux Saloon show too. So I was the way my bag is set up, it's actually vented, so it's fine. It didn't like overheat.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah,
That's actually the sort of sleep state on laptops is a little weird right now. So apparently, there's something called S3 sleep, which is like a deep sleep mode or something like that. But there's some weird quirks with 12th gen Intel where they sort of like semi-deprecated that sleep mode, which is the more reliable version of sleep, which I think is SIOX or something.
Okay.
So Windows supports it, and it's supposed to just be like a super power efficient sleep state. But apparently it causes a lot of issues with Linux, and like sometimes your Wi-Fi card won't wake up when you come back from sleep. So far, it hasn't broken yet, so maybe it's not that bad, but I have seen a lot of reports about that, so that's definitely on my radar because I like to have internet connectivity.
There was a time I had some issues, and it might have been a tumbleweed issue on my machine where Bluetooth didn't properly like initialize whatever. It was there, but not really like connecting to devices. So I had to power cycle just the Bluetooth module. And I'd like to say I've never had that on Windows, but that would be lying. In fact, it was worse sometimes on Windows. So that was Windows 10, and I know that's old Windows now, right? That was for work. But anyway, so I don't know what was causing that. The Wi-Fi would reactivate, but sometimes Bluetooth would be funny. Now, you said you went with Silverblue. Did it come with Windows on that machine initially? I saw.
Indeed.
Yeah, I thought you said that you'd never even started it up in Windows on Twitter. Is that correct? I had
Indeed.
I had some notification. I just saw the little blurb it today on that, and so I didn't have time to actually check my messages while working today.
Driving.
Yeah, I can't check messages while driving. I mean, I can, but probably not a good idea to Twitter and drive a bus full of people. I'm thinking that would be
they'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be enjoying it.
I actually, the first thing I did was I'm not against secure boot, by the way. I actually think it is just another thing that is useful if you do use it. But because I won't be using it, I disabled that right away. And then I also Dell laptop BIOSes have a secure wipe function, which basically just like cleans the drive, the internal drive, so that way there's nothing on it. I did that before I booted into anything. I spent like half an hour in the UEFI menu just tweaking a whole bunch of random stuff. So it's nice to see that like good UEFI menus still exist, because I know a lot of OEMs have been locking that stuff down. So, but yeah, no, I wiped it right away. Ran updates fully in Silverblue, firmware updates fully in Silverblue, and so far it has not exploded, which is a good sign. It's a +1 for Linux.
That is a great sign. Anytime things don't explode, I'm usually very excited about that.
Yeah. It's I actually didn't realize until after I had bought the laptop, or I'd placed the order, that there is the same laptop I can get with Ubuntu instead of Windows, and it would have been $100 cheaper. So I slightly regret that, but here I am.
Now, I will say, this is just personal opinion, it's nice to have a Windows license because there are cases when you do need to run a Windows application, and so I'll run them in a VM when I have to do that. And I think
That's a good point.
it's handy to have that. I mean, it's $100, yeah. I mean, that's a lot of cheeseburgers.
Yeah.
Not as many
The
as it
good
used to
thing
be.
is too is if I ever resell the device for whatever reason, or even if I gift it to someone at some point, at least Windows will be available. It'll just activate with the hardware key, so that'll be good at least.
What I normally do when with new computers before I wipe them is make an image of the Windows. What's it called? I can't. You know how you make an image and you write it to disk? Yeah, write it to disk. So because it comes with all the firmware and the drivers.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to go downloading them from, the Dell site or whatever website that you need to go to. So I normally do that before I get rid of it. But you've just exploded it straight from the BIOS.
It's like the first time I switched to Linux was a complete blind nuke and pave. I didn't even have a backup. I literally just wiped my main machine without even thinking about it. Yep.
Because if you do sell it, it's best to sell it with that disk. That way it installs everything. You've got that backup disk. That's what I normally do. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, also the fingerprint reader works.
Oh, really?
The fingerprint reader works, which is mind-blowing to me, because it's actually already baked into the system settings in Silverblue. So setting up the fingerprint, I didn't have to install any extra packages or do anything weird. It was just there automatically. And this laptop has a stereo microphone, so there's like, instead of having like the microphone where the webcam is, at the very top of the laptop lid, I don't even know if I can show you, but there's like a little hole here and here, and it's a stereo microphone, and it looks like it actually works on Linux, like the stereo channels work, which is really weird to me. So that's kind of cool.
And why are you using Silverblue at the moment? What was your decision for that?
That's a good question. So at first it was just it started out because I was excited by the whole sort of immutable root file system, but now that's kind of become sort of something that I prioritize. So the only things that can modify the system are things installed like to the OS. So I don't install any of my apps to the system. None of like my configs are going to be edited in any way. All of my apps are Flatpaks or installed in a toolbox container. So I don't have to worry about, let's say if like package updates come through, or let's say there's broken dependencies for an app, I don't have to worry about not getting important security updates because those are broken, or worrying about those breaking things themselves. So that's kind of the thing for me. And with the sort of auto update thing turned on, every time I close my lid, it's set to shut down. So every time I open the computer, the most up-to-date version of the OS is already running. Because the way Silverblue works is that rather than like applying the updates live, or even like with normal Fedora, when you reboot, the updates apply before you get in, Silverblue actually builds all this stuff in the background, and it boots into the new image just as fast as it would as if it was just booting into the normal system. So updates are like literally instant. It's really
I find this very interesting because you're using Flatpaks, which means that if anything goes wrong, your Flatpaks are still there. It's not part of any dependency nightmare or whatever. So that's interesting as well. How do you find, like, what can I say? When things need to talk to each other, I don't know if there's a case in that these days, but I mean, I can't even think of an example, but normally
NVIDIA
sometimes
drivers.
Right. Okay. Yep. How does that work?
Not as well as I wish it would, but they're relatively okay. So drivers are a little weird because you do have to sort of layer them onto the OS, because that's definitely not like something you can't ship drivers in a Flatpak and expect it to work for the whole system.
Yeah.
I'm sure technically somebody can probably hack that together in a terrifying string of code, but generally that's not how that would work. So it can be done. There are official instructions on the Fedora Silverblue like page. But essentially what you have to do is like it uses something called RPM OS tree, which is what builds the sort of system image from the repositories. And that's what gets rolled out to your machine. You can do what's called layering packages. So if you absolutely have to, you can install things to the OS, and that gets built when like the image is being created.
Right.
So the drivers would be a part of this. And basically every time you run updates, that whole image gets recreated. And so if you have really, really weird drivers that you have to install that take a long time to build, it's going to be even worse. But for the most part, NVIDIA is fine, but it's definitely not as fast or as clean as I wish it was.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Once the sort of changes how NVIDIA basically open sourced their drivers. They didn't really open source the drivers. They sort of moved the important bits off of the part that gets installed onto Linux, and that part is open source essentially. So once that sort of becomes the sort of standard rollout for NVIDIA drivers, it'll basically be a non-issue. It'll make things a lot easier. It's just weird right now because of the proprietary driver being strapped onto it.
Yep.
So what do you plan on using this laptop for? Like, what's its role going to be in your technical or your tech portfolio?
That's a really good question. So I did sort of buy it on accident.
You clicked buy now on accident.
So I was having issues with, I had actually just changed a bunch of settings in my browser for like cookies and like being like not storing cookies, and like I tweaked something that was supposed to block JavaScript on like in some weird way, and it did warn me that it could break websites. Well, the Dell website froze as I was like specking out my my thing, and I already have like a Dell preferred account and everything set up, and I can just like quick check out if I want to, and it goes through. So I made the mistake of the website froze and I started clicking on stuff, and I ordered myself an XPS. The good news is I actually do have a use for it. I just didn't think I was gonna have a use for it. So definitely unplanned, but this is gonna sort of be my go-to laptop. I actually am not using Mac OS laptop anymore.
That surprises me.
So it is weird. It feels weird, but so basically editing photos, taking photos, doing stuff like that. I'm also going to be continuing to work on like my writing, and I want to do some like VM stuff on it. So that's definitely in the cards. And other than that, it's a really, really nice build, but it's like highly portable. So typically when I go out taking photos, I'm usually up in the mountains.
I had one more question for you. So you said up in the mountains with your laptop is where you're going to go with it. So obviously the good battery life, and you're going to probably take it in the mountains to do what? Like for like photography, you're going to like checking photography, or is it normally when I go for like a hike or something, I don't take my laptop. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah, well, when I go hiking, I definitely don't take it with me, but sometimes to get to places where I want to take photos, so I will sometimes do like wildlife photography. But I also there's some mountains up here, Mount Lemon is what it's called, but there's like a big forest. And sometimes you just have to get a little far out to get to the parts where the waterfalls are, and like there's like cliffs and stuff. So I'll go out there and I'll take pictures on my camera, and then I will import them onto my laptop so that way I can see them on a sort of high quality screen, do like mild edits and stuff like that before I send them off to my machine at home. It's easier for me to do some of it while I'm out, because it's not only like I can sort of see what I'm doing, like reference the actual environment I'm in while I'm editing, rather than doing all of it away from where I took the photos. So that's kind of the thought process behind it.
Okay. Well, that's very cool. What is your life cycle like with a laptop? Is it a couple years, 3 years, till it
You know what? It's been so
decides
inconsistent.
till it decides to fall apart?
I've never had a
Lately, about
laptop
3
fall apart
months.
on me. Yeah, probably 3 months. No, hopefully I don't. Hopefully I'm not buying another laptop anytime soon because yeah, I can't justify doing that again.
Yeah,
But it's,
understandable.
yeah,
Very cool. I hope to hear more about this laptop, how it's working out, because there's always that honeymoon period when you first get a machine. Everything goes great, unless you're me, and it starts out rough. But then you start to have issues with it, one reason or another, and it'd be interesting to find out how long this laptop stays with you as a primary go-to machine.
my goal is to not hate it.
Would you say not to what? Drop it?
To not hate it.
Oh, not hate it.
Throw it in the lake.
Or drop it. Fall off a cliff with it on your back, but then it saves your life somehow.
That would be the cushion.
One thing I find about hardware is that if you spend a little bit more money when you initially buy it and have it better spec, it'll last for more years than you originally wanted it to. Like I got a decently spec laptop back in 2017 and I'm still happy with it. It had a 16 GB RAM, but earlier this year I upgraded it. So now I think I can use it for as long as don't drop it and break it. I think I can use it for as much long as this laptop works. Basically, I replace the RAM and the battery. So it's as good as new. Unless my OS breaks, then I'll reinstall. That's fine. But the hardware is still good.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But if you cheap out and buy a lower spec laptop, it's very hard for it to become obsolete. When your OS has increasingly stringent requirements like Windows 11 and Windows, the thing with Windows 11 is that the OS has a stricter requirement than Windows 10. And it's also not only the OS, many apps are increasingly becoming more and more resource hungry and intensive. And it slowly is you can use bad hardware, but at what point you get frustrated with it? You can use them but not have a good experience. But for having a good experience, you always need more RAM. Browsers just taking up too much RAM. You can't help it. I think that's the main reason I got upgraded from 16 to 32. 16 was just enough for me. My laptop was always at 13 or 14. But sometimes when I add other apps, it's oh, this is very slow. But now when I upgrade to 32, it's always hovering around 18. I stopped checking for my RAM now. I haven't checked in months. It's I don't care because it's enough for me. 16 is enough actually, but it's just on the border. So that's the main issue.
Yeah, I do agree that spending a little more money on hardware, you'll probably be happy with it in the long run. I know that when I do get some, let's say, I've had some less than stellar laptops. Those didn't hold up, hinges broke, things cracked, stuff like that. But the more, the business grade machines that you do spend more money on, they do seem to hold up a lot better. Kind of take the abuse of it a bit more. So, okay, well, great. Well, thank you very much, Schykle. I hope to hear some exciting updates as Silverblue progresses, and if you choose to try anything else on there, please do tell us how that goes. All right, so we're gonna hop. First, before I do that, I want to welcome Linux Ninja, Sravan. Thank you for being here, and also Anthony. Thank you for joining the saloon, for pulling up a stool to the bar, bellying up to the bar, and having a chat about Linux. So, all right, so we're gonna move into the main topic, which is Clear Linux. Now, our rules are: the intent is to talk about the different aspects of the operating system and discuss the experience from using it. This is a discussion by which should be objective and constructive. Non-objective opinions like "this is garbage" is not helpful. Rather, let's say things like "I wish it had a specific feature," or "I really need a feature that allows me to do a thing." That will benefit the conversation. The point is to highlight the positives, but not ignore the lowlights of the project. Remember, this is a labor of love for some. Let's not poo-poo on it. I know it's an Intel project, but still, it's an open source project, so there are probably people who work on it that are not on the Intel payrolls. So let's try to be cool but honest. Eris did a straw poll, but he did a poll on how is Clear Linux OS exploring going. Andres could not be here. He said he was stuck on the Cinnabar Islands, whatever that means. In Telegram, 5% said it's going great, 11% said it's going okay, 17% is not having a great time with it, 39% said they're not interested in the exploration, 23% are unable to do this exploration. You had 2 weeks to do it. Come on, man. I'm kidding. 5% are not interested in doing any explorations in general, and 0 others. In Matrix, half said it's going okay, and half said not interested in the exploration. So a little bit about Clear Linux. Clear Linux OS is a Linux distribution developed and maintained on Intel's 01.org open source platform and optimized for Intel's microprocessors with an emphasis on performance and security. Its optimization also affects AMD-systems, although I'm guessing not optimized. Clear Linux OS follows a rolling release model. It's not intended to be a general purpose Linux distribution. It's designed to be used by IT professionals for DevOps, IA application development, cloud computing, and containers. It is currently the fastest available Linux implementation. A little history. In 2015, Intel introduced Clear Linux OS as an OpenStack Summit at the OpenStack Summit in 2015. Vancouver, and initially, it was limited to cloud usage. Intel began the Clear Containers project to address container security. In 2015, originally, Clear Linux OS was deployed as a single monolithic unit. In May 2019, Clear Linux OS released a new desktop installer and started a help forum. Clear Linux OS is available via Microsoft Azure Marketplace, Amazon Web Service Marketplace. It does have some requirements. You can't run it on any machine. It supports the second generation Intel Core, Sandy Bridge CPUs and later, Xeon E3 and later, and Silvermount-based Intel Atom C2000 and E3800 processors. An install system is booted via the EFI bootloader or via systemd boot. Minimum system requirements are an SSE4 and CLMUL, or carry less multiplication, as well as EUFI. Some features. Clear Linux OS uses reference stacks to install images that are optimized and tested together for specific use cases. It also utilizes a strict separation between user data and system config files, called stateless, so that even a misconfigured system will still boot correctly and then perform a factory reset so it can be reconfigured. That I think is pretty cool. For the desktop, by default, Clear Linux OS ships with the GNOME desktop environment, but instead of Wayland, it uses X11, and most graphical effects are disabled. KDE Plasma and XFC are also available for installation. It is possible to manually enable Wayland. For package management, packages are usually installed and updated through bundles with the help of SWUPD, which is described as an OS-level software update program using Delta updates to minimize update sizes. Flatpak is also pre-installed and can be used to install and use packages. And they have something called Mixer. It's a tool for creating third-party bundles, which can then be installed using swapd. I think swapd sounds fun to say. As far as ISO options, there are a lot. There's a desktop, a server, containers, which isn't really an ISO option, Azure Hyper-V, Cloud, Guest, Amazon Web Services, Google Compute Engine, KVM, KVM Legacy, VMware, and a bunch of others like that, which I probably will never touch in my life. Maybe not. I shouldn't say that. So the setup process. I installed the desktop version. Did anybody here get a chance to give Clear Linux OS a run? Schykle, Colin, Rick, maybe Jinda. I don't know. He's not making eye contact with me anymore. So maybe he doesn't. Maybe he didn't. I'm guessing that's a no. Not sure if Sravan or Anthony did. Or Linux in general.
I think you told us last time we were here, like, there's no point running this distro in a VM. So I was like, nah, I'm not going to do this.
I think that's an argument that could be made, but I think that's only if you can do testing in the respect of like performance. So it depends on your parameters for testing. So the setup process, you have to use a newer machine, and I thought it had a very slick install interface. Did anybody seem to think it was pretty slick?
Pretty good.
Yeah. I thought
it was definitely different. It was
Yeah.
definitely different.
I think they rolled their own. I couldn't tell if it was anything else, something that somebody else uses at all. It didn't look like Ubiquity to me.
It looks like Fedora's installer a little bit to me.
Yeah, it did have but the button's in the right spot.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
it. And a destructive install.
Yeah.
Did you go for the destructive install?
Yeah, well, that's destructive means it's going to wipe everything on the drive, basically.
You gotta.
That caught my eye, like destructive install. What is this? Destructive install.
Yeah, this is some interesting terminology there.
Because
I
it will
love it.
destroy everything on the disk, is what basically it's saying. So I did pause there for a moment. Did anybody have any issues with it during the setup process? Did anybody have any hangups?
Well, I had one.
Oh, well?
Yeah, basically, I installed it and testing it. So I installed it on my computer, and then it installed fine. Everything went fine. So then I went to install it on my on my live stream this morning, and it didn't boot back up when it's finished. It says successfully installed everything, but it wouldn't boot up. And I said, okay, what's going on here? So I tried it again, and basically what happened is that it doesn't like to install over itself. Installing over another distro, where you wipe the slate clean, then you install it, it seems to install fine. If you install it over itself again, didn't like that for some reason.
I was just gonna say I haven't looked at their partition table, which is weird for me because I love file systems. But I have a guess that might be some weird oddity with LVM. A lot of distributions that set up their installs over LVM, when you boot into like the installer, it automatically mounts the LVM devices, and then it can't properly format because it's trying to wipe and address partitions, but instead there's a logical volume in the way. So that'd be my guess on why it failed miserably, because that used to be something the Elementary OS installer would do as well. You couldn't
The only
install it once you
thing-
installed it once.
Yeah, the only problem with that is I looked at the disk after install, it just says regular boot sector and root partition.
So.
Yeah, so anyway, yeah, so I don't know what the problem was. My guess is had something to do with the boot sector, in that it would mess up something, or wouldn't overwrite something that needed to be overwritten or something like that in the boot sector. And I say I went in and just Gparted after the show, and I did it twice and it failed. Boot up, and I went Gparted and deleted all of the partitions, and I went and did it again, and then it installed perfectly. So apparently the destructive thing is as destructive as it indicates.
So it should be more destructive.
Yeah, right.
Maybe you should have a destructive and a super destructive install process.
Yeah.
Like a destructive and nuke from orbit, maybe? That'd be fun.
It's like the chaos mode they put on microwaves now.
Oh, I didn't know about this.
Yeah, it's for defrost, but it's called chaos, and I really like
Chaos.
it.
What brand of microwave has chaos mode on their button panel?
There's a couple actually. Hold on, let me see. Because I want one. I want one really bad.
I mean, I have one of those like you mount it over your stove type microwaves, and I would almost replace it just to have a button that says chaos mode.
Looks like
I could just put a sticker on it, I suppose.
chaos defrost. It's amazing.
Okay, I was going to say I had the same problem as Rick on my first install. I had something on my I had another operating system on my computer. Just did a destructive install, and obviously destructive is not the right name because it didn't really destroy anything. But yeah, I think it just didn't start up, and then I did another install and it worked. So that was That was interesting.
Yeah,
I don't know
it did the
anyone.
same thing to me.
Yeah, okay.
Same thing.
So
It never did boot though.
Oh,
no, it didn't boot. No,
No,
had
I
to do
never
another
did.
install.
I never got it to boot. I got it to run in VirtualBox though, but it wouldn't install the guest editions. It kept dying on that. To me, it was dismal at best.
Now, this is real hardware for me,
yeah, that
but I'm
would
running
be-
it now.
That would be frustrating. All right, I personally found I didn't have any. Back up here. I didn't have any issues installing it. I liked the installer. It seemed to install fine for me. Booted up, no problem. I was actually impressed by the speed of boot up time. Like it was almost a whiplash kind of speed to boot up time. Like I started it and then I blinked and there it was. Now login Cubicle Nate. So I clicked on that. So I thought that was pretty impressive. Now, as far as the applications, there's not a whole lot installed. I mean, there's actually a lot of developer stuff installed, but not things, messaging systems and whatnot. Did anybody have any issues setting up Flatpak, going to the software center? Did anybody have like Flatpak die on you?
Oh, I didn't try Flatpak.
I installed a Libre Wolf on Flatpak, and it actually is already attached to Flatpak. It's FlatHub version of the computer.
Okay.
So yeah. I didn't have to enable Flatpaks or anything. I just was able to start installing stuff if I wanted to.
I didn't go too much into things because I could not get Firefox to work. It was just graphically, it was, what would you say, glitching out, and
Okay.
it wouldn't start.
Yep.
And then I did a bit of homework on that and found that it's you have to turn off, you have to uncheck the use hardware acceleration. And so I started it in safe mode, unchecked that, and now it works. So I don't know what the issue is there, but I did it just on a simple internet search. I found that information, so it must be a well-known issue for Clear Linux. But Firefox is working fine. But I did install Epiphany, which is AKA GNOME Web, AKA Web. and that was working fine, so I just did a little bit of searching in that.
Okay.
But now Firefox is up and running fine.
Same problem with it, except I didn't figure it out. I went and installed Wolf, so I didn't have to worry about it.
Well, there is that.
So I'm now interested to have a look. Is there I'm just on the FlatHub thing here, quick setup. So for Clear Linux, is there a Flatpak install, or is it installed by default?
Yeah, it was installed out of the box for me.
Oh, was it? Oh, okay. There you go.
It's enabled too.
I won't. Definitely, they don't have their icon on the FlatHub website for quick setup anyway.
Yeah.
So it must be already there. I haven't tried.
I was gonna
Try and install.
boot Clear Linux back up and it froze on me, so I don't know yet. I'm hoping it comes
Yeah,
back.
it probably would.
I'll just do a flat.
That's pretty much
Oh
all
yeah,
it does.
Flatpak list. There you go. It's there.
Much like Clear Linux, things are so fast you skip important bits. So I've noticed this is sort of highlighted for me, and this is also, by the way, it's going to sound weird, but this is why I don't use XFCE. It's too fast. Like, part of designing something that you interact with as a human is that it also needs to work as if it's interacting with humans. Clear Linux is incredibly fast because it cuts out a lot of things that aren't strictly necessary, and that's why boot is super freaking fast, and that's why there's a weird graphical issues. So there are things that are really nice. That's also why animations are disabled, or at least a lot of them are. It's really nice to have something that's really, really fast. But the really enjoyable parts of a UI are not just speed, it's fluidity, it's the feeling of responsiveness. And when things are so fast that they sort of skip the nice bits, it will not feel very good. Especially when it causes applications to freak out because there's issues passing along the nice graphical effects that make things like Firefox nice and smooth and using the GPU instead of the CPU. And so little things like that, they matter. And I think for a user-facing OS, there's probably a reason Clear Linux hasn't caught on. And for me, that's probably a huge part of it. It's definitely a very technically oriented distribution.
So I see Michael says the Linux does not include mitigations like for CPU mitigations like Meltdown.
Correct.
But
Which
right in their marketing propaganda pamphlet, or whatever you want to call it, they do say they focus on speed and security. So is there some other security measures they can take that do not include CPU mitigations?
technically, yes. Sort of. So I guess there are security things that they do implement. CPU mitigations for Spectre and Meltdown are a little weird because they are technically not strictly necessary, and also can be mitigated in software, although that has some sort of like some speed issues depending on what software you're using. Like in Linux, you can launch any distribution without them, but you can still have applications make use of it. Like even if you have CPU mitigations disabled for Linux, if you're using Chrome, for example, that will still have mitigations built into it that you can also turn off. So it's just it's one of those things where technically it's not necessary, but for something you're going to be deploying in a secure fashion, it would be smart to do.
So here's what I do. I'm not saying this is the right strategy, and you can go ahead and admonish me at this point, but I don't run CPU mitigations on laptops, only on desktops. Reason being, the desktops typically stay on. And like my server, also, that has the CPU mitigations enabled. But my laptop, which is on and off, doesn't stay on all the time. I don't run mitigations on there. I'm also not running any services on there. So am I making... Here's where I'm expecting Linux Ninja to jump in here and like try and reach through his webcam and strangle me, or do something else ninja-ish. But I'm wondering if that's a mistake to not run those mitigations on the laptop when it's not on all the time. Linux Ninja, do you have any thoughts on that?
I would say that the risk you're trying to mitigate on your own personal desktop is a risk that's probably more likely to happen on a server OS that's your own personal desktop.
Yep.
I don't think has the same risk level. The machine you're sitting at, you're interfacing with, you're casually running applications on. I don't think that is the target environment for those sorts of exploits. I feel like it's more for an OS that's server oriented, incoming connections, more likely to be compromised than your desktop sitting on a private LAN.
Also, my desktop looks like a Commodore 64, so no one's going to try and hack into it. Just saying. All right, let's move on to some general user experiences. Now, assuming you had it running for an extended period of time, you're able to like click around and play and try and pretend to be productive in it. How did that go? They do have GNOME, GNOME 40. I don't remember what version of GNOME now.
41.3, I think.
41.3. So, did anybody like enjoy the user experience of their expression of GNOME desktop?
I thought it was terrible. I hate
Yeah,
GNOME.
me too.
Yeah, that's obviously not true considering it's the only thing I've run. No, I liked it.
It half the time it didn't work.
Well,
you go into activities and then you get to the button where there's all the icons where your software is.
Like a dock.
And it has like say 6 across. And then the next time I opened it, it had 4 across and it was a shorter box. And then when I opened up a program and dropped it into one of the desktops, it only goes to the one on the right. It never goes to the one on the left because it doesn't work. And so I have a copy of the newest, brand new Ubuntu, and it works fine. It's flawless. But this one doesn't work.
I'll give you a bit of a tip with GNOME, and it took me. I've been using GNOME for a long time now. It took me a long time to realise that the window follows the mouse wherever the mouse is. Wherever the mouse is, that's where the window opened, and it took me a while. Why does this thing keep opening randomly on different windows and different monitors and all that? Wherever my mouse was, I figured out that that's where it was opening. I found that by fluke, but that's what happens. I don't know if that's intended to be that way or whether you can change it. I've never looked into it, but that's what I discovered. Back me up here, Schykle.
When you
Yeah,
say
no, so that's
when you say it follows the mouse, so is it like center mass of where the window's going to open? That's where it opens. Maybe like adjusting to the window edges.
No, just whatever. Well, as far as I know, like if I click an icon and I move my mouse to the right window or right monitor, it will open up in the right monitor.
Oh, okay, I see what you're saying.
It took me a while to figure that out, but I just wondered why it was so random, and then I realized I just discovered it by accident.
Yeah, so that's considered your active area. So the
Right.
logic is just that if you've put your cursor somewhere, that's probably where you are working. And this logic should, as far as I know, apply across monitors. So if you want to open something on a specific monitor, move your mouse where you want it to be.
I would say that makes sense to me, though. I don't think that I would argue with the idea of the application opening to where my mouse is, my mouse pointer. So that seems like a reasonable way of making it work, unless you have set some specific window rules, I would think.
Yeah, I don't know if you can set the window rules maybe in dconf editor or something like that, possibly. Yeah, but it's an interesting one. I've actually played around with it before. I open the application, then I close it, and I know it's going to open quicker. So I'll see if I can actually beat it because my menu's on this monitor. So I try to move my mouse over there, see if I can actually beat it before it opens.
That's funny.
Quite fun.
Well, if your Clear Linux is very fast, so that you'd probably have a hard time beating it. Yeah.
I'm only using it on one monitor though. That's a thing because I've plugged my I've plugged my laptop into one monitor, so that's all. Okay. My laptop doesn't even have a monitor. I ripped it off.
Was it say like an outburst of violence that just kind of happened, or?
No, it was broken.
Okay.
It was falling apart, and I tried to fix it, and then the violence started.
Okay. So there was a moment of frustration, and then an outburst.
Yeah, it's like
violence.
I'm not using this monitor anymore.
Yeah, I mean, these things happen. Inanimate objects should suffer the wrath of something. Well, that's very cool. I was going to say I have some issues with the interface freezing up on me occasionally, and then I did log in to find out like what's like to SSH in to see like what the CPUs are doing, just because I was curious. And I did notice that there was like a CPU to get pegged, and then it would just just one CPU, and then it just the UI just kind of stuck on me, and I don't know what was going on there. Obviously, it traded CPUs probably as they heat up, I'm guessing.
Is this VM or is this real hardware?
It's real hardware.
Real hardware, yeah.
I have seen that happen.
So I think it's probably a GNOME issue. I don't know, because GNOME is single-threaded, and then the interface basically stops working.
No, it's not single-threaded on 42, is it? I don't think.
It's 41.
No, mine's 42.4.
Is it? Well,
Yep.
I took a screenshot.
42.4.
So it's currently
It's
frozen.
all the same.
Maybe you haven't updated yet.
There's a lot of things I haven't done yet.
So there's I've noticed some quirks with things hanging, and I don't really know why, but I do think it's probably not totally unrelated to the graphical issues that break certain apps. Like using OBS produced some fun results for me. So that was interesting. Yeah, there's something's wrong with how GPU communication is being done. I've noticed that. It feels like pretty much everything is being done on CPU, because I noticed basically zero GPU utilization pretty much the entire time I was using it. So software hasn't been designed to work that way in decades, so I don't really know what's going on there and why it's struggling so much with doing GPU stuff.
Well, I think it's primarily meant to work as a server-based OS, not so much as a desktop-based. So I'm not going to ding it too hard on that because
That's
of
fair.
their focus has been only recently, relatively speaking, on desktop. I think developers typically like to run what they for server what locally what they run on a server. I think that's probably the reason for it. Although
I've had no problems. I've had no problems with mine freezing on real hardware. Mine's an Intel, but it also has an Optimus NVIDIA. I did look at installing that, but that looked like a nightmare, so I didn't even bother. I had some better things to do, but it's definitely running okay. But like Schykle said, it's really snappy and fast because, yes, they have disabled all the animations, so that's probably why it looks that way. Just everything just opens real quick. So maybe that's what's causing, like Schykle said, some of the glitches. Maybe they can't handle it.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is GNOME handles all the effects and such through GPU acceleration, not CPU acceleration. Is that correct?
Oh,
I thought the compositor was using the GPU for that.
It is GPU bound. I think there is a software rendering mode. I haven't ever the last time I've actually used software rendering is over 3 years ago, so I have no idea how that works now.
I've just played a Extreme Tux Racer on the Wayland setup, so that's pretty good.
Oh, is it running Wayland? Is it? I didn't check that, to be honest. Alt F2.
So it defaults to AX11, but you can set it to run Wayland. If you login screen, and do the change on it. It also has something else called Weston. I'm not sure what that is. Window manager, some kind or something. I don't know.
I thought I read somewhere they weren't using Wayland, or is that something else I was looking at? It's definitely running X11 by default anyway.
Right, by default it runs that, but you can switch it to Wayland on the login screen.
Oh, okay. I didn't check that.
I haven't used GNOME without Wayland in so long that it was definitely sort of a wake-up call for me. I know Wayland's been a tough spot for some users for a while, but it is when it's working, it is so much better in terms of responsiveness and in terms of overall fluidity. It is really, really, really good. And going back to X11, there are so many strange quirks that I did not realize were there until coming back to it. Opening windows, on Wayland, no matter what window it is, wherever I had a window from a specific app, it always goes back to where it should be. So if I close 20 windows and reopen them all, they all go back to the exact place they were before, which is super nice. On X, only maybe half of the apps I have will even do that. So little things like that absolutely bugged the heck out of me when I was using it, and I don't think I ever want to use X again. It's nice when the system just sort of remembers how things were.
I was using Wayland for a little while, but I kept having to go back into X11, and I cannot remember what that was for. But so
Probably
I've just
OBS.
stayed. No, I had OBS working in that.
Oh.
That was I had OBS working on Wayland, and it still does. It could have been a Kdenlive Live thing. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But I ended up going back to X because it's it's frustrating when you're doing something and you have to log out and log back in again. So I find that frustrating. So I have remained on X since then, but I probably should revisit Wayland again and find out what that was.
About a year ago, I couldn't use Kdenlive under Wayland. It would launch, but if I would go to use the video player in it and do any of that, either the video wouldn't work or the audio wouldn't work, and it would just crash out of nowhere. So yeah, that hasn't happened to me in a long time though. So I don't know what that was.
So do you use Kdenlive still? Do you still?
I do.
Okay. I might have to revisit that. I think I may have to see how we go.
I used Wayland, is it yesterday, the day before? I was giving it another run around the block, and when I try and use a VM in VirtualBox with Wayland running, the UI stops working. I think Schykle, you commented on that in the Telegram, and I did determine that the issue was specifically VMs, but there are other things I can't do either. Like some applications don't. Well, I can't drag and drop into Firefox like files from Dolphin, and then I don't have the ability to use the virtual KVM, the Synergy, Barrier, whatever. I think Barrier is the other one. But it's the same thing, but Synergy. So that kind of is a deal breaker for Wayland yet. I know they're working on it. It's gonna happen. It'll be there. But you are
I know
right.
the drag and drop works in GNOME Wayland, but I think they're still working on that with certain apps in KDE.
There's some issue with GTK talking to Qt something in Wayland. Like there's an
Some
interconnect.
kind of portal.
Because it does work sometimes, but doesn't always work. So maybe
it'll work one way and not the other, which is kind of funny. So you can, in some apps, you'll be able to copy and paste, but only from one app to another and not the other way around. Because one is an X Wayland window and the other is a Wayland window.
I gotcha.
Yeah, it's great.
There was another issue that I had with Wayland that was irritating. I couldn't remember what it was, but the
could have been VirtualBox for me too. Actually, now that you mentioned that, I think it might have been VirtualBox for me also.
The solution is after you close a virtual machine, you have to do it through keyboard because the mouse will stop responding. Like it won't interface with the mouse.
Right,
that's not good.
Yeah, that if you restart Plasma, if you kill Plasma Shell and restart Plasma Shell, then it'll work again. But you have to kill the VM first.
I think I know what's happening with that too. It's when it's the input pass through, I think is what's happening. Like your mouse, sort of like when you go into like a virtual machine with your mouse, it can sort of capture the mouse. And I think once that locks up, you're kind of borked.
Yeah, I mean it's easy to kill it and restart it, but you're still, and it's not all applications are affected either. It's just certain applications will not accept input, which makes it even more exciting. So it's kind of like, what's not going to work now? So anyway.
You don't need to interact with your computer.
No, but it's much more secure that way when I'm not interacting with it.
I can tell you one thing you might want to try, because I'm having problems even now I'm using X at the moment. I'm having a problem with the mini toolbar. If the mini toolbar is up, my keyboard doesn't work.
Really?
Right, so I have to disable the mini toolbar, and then the keyboard will work. So you could probably try that, because that's a problem for me, but not with the mouse, just with the keyboard.
God,
So
I love technology. You can run an entire OS inside of another OS, but boy, if that toolbar's up, there goes your keyboard. Like, geez.
Yeah, because every time I'm doing a video or something, and then I'm recording, and then I get to the part where I'm putting my user information, bang, I have to stop and start again because I've forgotten to disable the mini toolbar. I do it every time.
I mean, it's kind of exciting, really. So any other comments on the general user experience? Assuming you had some comments on that for Clear Linux.
I was swap D reminds me of your zipper dup. So this one has swap D. I don't recall updating with swap D. I might have done it within the GNOME software because I was checking that out. But definitely I was looking at the information on the website, just trying to find a simple install command, right? Couldn't find it anywhere. I did find it in something else, but it wasn't something that it was like, this is an install command or a basic one. I couldn't find that. But if you do a swapd search and look for an application, it does actually tell you in the terminal, this is how you install it, right? Which is pretty cool. So I didn't know that was there till later on. I just did a search for an application. It says swapd, I think bundle add, and then the application name. So just in case you're wondering, that's where you can find that information.
So I didn't check to see like how much software is in the swapd repository, but I didn't. I just used. I went to write to Flatpak
Right.
for stuff.
Allegedly
so
over 4,000 packages.
That's not all
Yeah.
that much. That seems pretty trim.
No.
So, Rick, what were you going to say about
Yeah.
your general user experience?
Well, I was wondering about, some of y'all probably noticed this, but first I looked at the internet section of the apps there, see what it had for browser, didn't list anything. So I didn't think it had anything installed. And then when I do a typing into the search bar of Firefox, it pops up. But then, amazingly, it has to activate something before it actually start up, assuming it does. I don't really get it to start up, but obviously I didn't figure that part out. So I was wondering if anybody else ran across that or had any issues. Still doesn't show Firefox on my internet section.
Yeah, I don't.
I actually didn't know Firefox was installed because I didn't see it. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah,
might be
so
why.
I'm not the only one. All right, thank you.
I went straight through I went into Flatpak and installed Epiphany through there because I just didn't think there was even a
That's what I thought.
browser.
So I
That's
saw
great.
Livewell. But then I typed in Firefox, I said, hey, there it is. I
That's
clicked
so
on it, and
funny.
then it did the activate thing, and it freaked out on me, and I couldn't get it to work. So, anyway.
That's odd.
So
Yeah.
one of my gripes, it's kind of a little big thing, like a little big planet. It's a little thing, but it's a big thing for me, and that there wasn't a dark mode I could select in the toolbar, like in the
Yeah.
settings. I couldn't go to like a dark theme.
Sounds like
Yeah, there's a dark theme.
Was there a dark theme? It didn't.
Yeah,
I
there
couldn't
is.
find-
I have no idea how I found. Yeah, you just
Under
right click on the
appearance.
desktop where it says change background, and you can pick dark.
Well, I'm saying like the some of the widgets, like the window widgets, were all very light and irritating me, and so I couldn't make
Understood.
those. I could make those dark. I mean, I didn't care about the
Okay.
background, and so that it's just a thing. It's a little thing, but it's kind of a big thing for me.
Yeah, it is. Understood.
So I didn't.
Yeah,
find
well,
that.
even on the dark theme, the software center is actually still
Yeah.
a light theme. Yep. So it's a bit inconsistent there. There was Audacity wasn't available to install as a Flatpak, yes, but not within the repos. So I thought that was. There's a few go-to ones that I have: Audacity, GIMP, Kdenlive, the simple ones, OBS that I use. I always check some of those basic applications out, but I was surprised that Audacity wasn't within their repos, only as a Flatpak. That surprised me. Thought that's normally a simple one that would be added, but there you go.
Right, try the software center.
Oh, say,
Yeah, it's in there as a
GNOME
Flatpak.
GNOME tweaks to set legacy apps and assign a dark theme. Yeah, having to install secondary applications to customize your desktop. That's kind of a. I don't like that. But thank you, Henry.
I have a complaint.
Okay.
Oh,
In the installer, when you're adding your user, whenever I'm installing virtual machines, every machine gets the same username and password, so I don't have to go write them down. None of my standard passwords will pass its password test, so I can't even add the user password that I use for all my machines. It refuses. So I've got to come up with something else, which means the next time I try to run it, I won't remember how to log in.
So, Linux Ninja, you're not supposed to use password 123 with a capital P.
Is your password under 8 characters? Is that what the problem is?
So typically my username is user and the password is user, and it says, well, minimum 8 characters. Okay. So we'll make the username user and we'll make the password user. Well, now you don't have enough different characters. So then I started down the path of, well, what other password can I put in here that I will remember? It doesn't like any of them.
User 1234.
User 1234. That's 8 characters, isn't it, or more?
Well, you do like 1234, then hold down Shift and hit 1234 again. Then you got your special characters, your numbers.
Yeah.
Sometimes you go meta.
Wait, I missed a piece of this, but can you set something with like the password command, or is it just the interface?
I gotta get it installed first.
Both.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah,
You can-
Yeah, that's
At
within the
this point,
installer.
actually, like when you're
Also-
actually testing these things, like you want simple usernames and passwords, right? Like you don't want complex
Yeah.
passwords. Like simple passwords should be an option. Like there can be a warning. So, for example, if you're in Calamares, you set a weak password. It says your password is weak, but it still allows it because it's like when you're testing, you don't want the mess of having a complex password because
I'm very torn on this because
useless.
I think if you're designing a system that's to be used by general users, in a way, you are sort of responsible for ensuring sort of decent security practices. I
Yes.
used to be of the opinion that suggesting strong passwords but not restricting passwords was always the right call. Now I'm a little more in the case of unless you have a hardware security chip, you like if you are shipping a device or an operating system, unless you have the ability to make something like a 4-digit password actually secure, you should probably not allow it without using advanced tools like the CLI.
But I
Plus
don't
one.
think Linux is a distribution for normal users, right? Like, is it?
No, that's
recommended?
true.
So, like, it's fine. Like, if it is something like Ubuntu or something, I get what you're trying to say. But even then, Ubuntu is a mixture of new users and also experienced users, like who don't care, like they know how to handle their own security. And that's why I think the warning thing is better, like you said, is because users have an option.
Yeah.
And if they really care, they actually see the warning, and it's like most new users like, oh, it's warning me about something, I should do something about it.
Yeah.
But if it is someone like you, it's like, I'm spinning this in a VM, why do I care about a password?
I
And this is a
suppose-
good example of if you're setting up a lab, you know, the password is designed to prohibit or hinder people from logging into the system. But in a lab, you don't want any hindrance. You would prefer no password, but you've got to set something. So, okay, well, we've got a standard password that we put on everything. Don't make that decision for me. I'm the administrator. Let me make that decision. I'll tell you what's appropriate for my password policy.
Well, I mean, the thing is that they still don't fully dictate that. You still have the ability to change that via the terminal. Yeah, the installer can also be controlled via CLI, so it's definitely. I see where it's inconvenient, but the option is still there, and I think that, like if you use the server install, it's not an issue. Like it lets you do it.
Speaking of passwords, I like that meme that was going around where it says, my password is incorrect because if I get it wrong, it tells me your password is incorrect.
Password hint. Those are the best.
That's a good one.
Like,
Oh,
like
man.
for example, like I do a lot of testing, and all my usernames are like strat test, and password is something is exactly the same because it's my routine for testing. It's like I always have the same username, same password. So even if I spin up VMs, other disks, whatever, I burn an image to SD card, forget about it. If I want to log in, it's like I know what password and username it is. If I want to reuse that again, I don't want to be restricted. Like at least that's
fair.
again my use case. But if I'm daily driving that that install, I'll obviously put a hard password. But again,
Yeah.
it should be up to the user.
But
You
that's the
should not
thing, like no
dictate it.
one knows, like when they make the distros, like they don't know whether you're using it just for testing or labs or whatever. So they have to kind of make some type of default assumption and move forward with it.
I agree with the first part of your statement. I disagree with the second part of your statement. Yes, I agree. They do not know your purpose for your installing it, but they do not have to make that assumption. They can default to like what Red Hat does. You can install a Red Hat server, you know, the most popular server OS out there according to Red Hat. You can put in a dumb password and it will warn you, hey, this is weak. Hit the button again if you really want to use this password.
That's what OpenSUSE does. Like, are you really sure? And then
It's
you have to
definitely not a
confirm it.
bad approach. I think that personally, like, I get not liking it. I guess that's fair. I mean, there's other options. You can use any other OS you want, but I think that I think 4 characters is a little anemic these days. So I am totally okay with them taking the initiative with their own software to say, hey, this is probably the minimum of what you should set up, and go from there.
Yeah, I agree.
So I have a solution for you. It's a mitigation Linux Ninja. You can just make all your passwords cubicle Nate is cool, and then that will solve.
Or I wish I didn't have to do this and make that the password.
Yeah.
I got the password. Nate uses Arch, by the way.
No, I don't.
He
I will
uses
say-
the best version of Arch
I
called
use-
OpenSUSE Tumbleweed.
I use SteamOS, which does have some Arch underneath, but I never have to touch
Archiness.
Pac-Man. I never have to touch Pac-Man.
That's
so.
good. I'm proud of you.
See, like to me, by the way, Nate uses Arch. Sounds like an insult, not like a rite
Does
of
not
passage.
have a ring.
I don't care. Me and Matt and you're on a case. You have to admit one day. We'll make you admit. Don't worry.
Well, as soon
Good
as
pressure.
as soon as SteamOS breaks on me because it's running Arch, then it'll get the OpenSUSE treatment. All right. So, any areas you found difficult with Clear Linux OS? I think we covered those already. Anything else you wanted to throw on that pile? Any other comments? No.
In terms of like raw performance, it's fast.
Yeah.
It's pretty fast. I will say, like, I got to give it to him. Like, I do a lot of stuff with like compressing, like large amounts of images all at once, and so that was significantly faster on Clear Linux than it was on my standard Fedora rollout. On like very simple, like one-off things, you don't really notice, but when you're compressing like thousands of PNGs and JPEGs all at the same time, it's a matter of like anywhere from like 10 to 15 minutes of difference. So it's pretty significant.
I wonder why that would be faster.
I have no idea. Zero. I mean, maybe it's the CPU mitigations, because I have that on everywhere else. Maybe that's part of it.
Well, regardless, you've had you notice things do happen faster in Clear Linux. So,
Yep.
But it's called an observational study. So that would require a more detailed follow-up study. So I think that's
Or I
fair.
could just go straight in with causation equaling correlation. Clear Linux is the fastest OS out there because my PNGs got got compressed quicker.
Yeah, I would be interested in seeing some real benchmarks on that, but I'm sure they're out there.
I should. Somebody's
probably done that,
got to
yeah.
be doing that. Phoronix, I think, probably does.
They probably have, yeah.
Yeah.
So any other
Did
thoughts?
anyone opt into telemetry?
I did.
They had a telemetry opt in. Yeah, so did I.
Yeah, one of them. It's fine. I mean, I'm not doing anything crazy with it. I don't have any. There won't be any data on there. And if they want to collect a little bit of information on me, if that's what I can give back to the project for my usage of it, I'm cool with that.
Yeah.
And just for info, I don't know if anyone clicked on the advanced button within the installer, but it does take you to gparted if you do so.
Yeah, I didn't do that, but that's good to know.
Yeah, it's curious, but I didn't click on it. I didn't click on it.
So any other thoughts about Clear Linux OS they'd like to maybe throw out there?
I
Scrap?
personally,
Oh, sorry, Schykle. Finish your thought. I interrupted you.
Oh, he's got chips.
Yeah, he's
Lucky.
He's busy.
Oh, that's not
Sour
even close to
Patch.
chips.
No, yeah.
Wow, I don't know. Wow, okay. I really want to see Clear Linux go in a more sort of user approachable direction. Like, I want to see it continue to do that. It's improved, and it's probably hard to believe from our experience these past couple of weeks, but it used to basically be difficult to get running at all on a lot of systems. AMD or Intel, there were even Intel systems it wouldn't run on. You had to fiddle with a bunch of stuff in the BIOS settings before it would run. depending on what laptop you had or what desktop you had. So they've definitely improved. I would like to see it be a little more approachable in terms of being a general purpose OS, but I also don't particularly care. Like it would be cool to see, because I think really, really fast systems adopting the most up-to-date versions of hardware support and not really focusing on legacy support. I think we need that. We need more projects that can do that, that are usable, and not just sort of tech demos. But I also don't think anybody's really missing out on anything. There's very good reasons the people who do use Clear Linux do use it, but if you have to ask if you need it, you probably don't need it. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
I like that. I think that's a fine final thought on that.
Yeah, I'm glad, because I actually don't know where I was going with that. The words just sort of came out of my mouth and I chased it.
There was a tapestry you were weaving that I think was
Yeah.
absolutely fine. It's very, very something to be hung on the wall. All right, so now for my favorite part of every distro exploration is the why you should give it a spin, because this is where I have fun with the whole thing. So Rick, let's say you're at a summer day camp, and it's normally for kids, but for whatever reason, they decided you fit in, and you got into a canoe with some random preteen, and they heard you were participating in Linux Saloon and wanted to know why they should give Clear Linux a spin as you're paddling your canoe down a river. What would you tell them?
I would say that if you have certain parameters or usage, it's probably a good distro for you, like developers, stuff like that.
Okay.
But it's a little iffy on just general usage.
Okay.
I think for most people, there's glitches, stuff still needs to be worked out. They're, like I said, doing a good job of it, but I think they need to improve better before it becomes a distro where a normal user can install it and use it.
Well, I'm just looking for the positive spin here. So this is all positive spin. So even if you have to make something up, that's what we're doing here.
Okay.
But that's fine.
Sorry.
So Colin, you just won a match boxing a kangaroo.
We're
But you did bust your lip open, and your eyebrow was got a little bit beat up there, and it was your last match. And as they're doing the little, putting like Vaseline and such on your mouth and your eyebrows, so you don't, get infected or whatever. The medical personnel asks you, "Hey, I heard you ran Clear Linux OS. Why should I try it?" Now, mind you, your lip is a little bit fat right now, and it's busted open. So just remember, you won, but just barely.
I'll just say, what is Clear Linux? I just got KO'd by a kangaroo. In all seriousness, well, look, I would only recommend it due to the speed of the operating system itself. But if I was to recommend it to a new user, I wouldn't mention it.
Okay.
Right, because I don't think it's for a new user, to be honest.
So you'd probably ask the medic if he'd used Linux before and make your decision from there.
Yeah, if it was a seasoned Linux user, then yeah, definitely give it a go if you're looking for speed. It's and if you're on an Intel appropriate device, then it may be for you. I was almost tempted to just try it on my main system, which is an Intel NUC, but I don't want to mess with my main system at the moment. But I'd be interested if it's running this fast on this laptop. I just can't imagine how fast it'd be running on that thing, to be honest. So that would be interesting.
Also what it's designed for, which is kind of ironic.
Is it really the Intel NUC?
Yeah. The Intel NUC is like what it's like primarily tested on. So that's really funny.
Right. So if I ever do decide that I'm going to swap distros out, which may not be too far in the near future, I might just in between just throw Clear Linux on there and see how it runs. That'd be
a good idea.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. But I understand not messing up your main system because I know it does put something on the non-volatile memory and the boot, like the EFI boot thingy. It'll leave something on there. So I don't know if that's counter.
Oh, it does do that, does it?
Yeah, it
oh,
does,
okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's why I don't do it.
See, that's why I only test things either in VM or on specific hardware that if I blow it up, I don't care.
That's correct. That's what my laptop's there for.
So Schykle, you are in the mountains of Arizona and you decide to go cliff jumping in a squirrel suit. But before you jump off the cliff, someone says, "Hey, you tried Clear Linux OS, didn't you? Why should I give it a try?"
For clarification, is it like one of those like flight suits, or is it like a onesie, like a squirrel onesie?
Whatever you want.
Okay.
It really matters.
Yeah, jumping off a cliff. I guess I don't have much time. Try it if you want to use something that's ridiculously fast and don't care about anything else. It's just the best of the best as fast as possible.
Well, they're like base jumping.
Splat. He died.
But it was fun on the way down. So Linux Ninja. I saw some comments. You probably wouldn't recommend it, but if you could make something up, a reason to try it, what would you say?
So this may shock you. I wasn't that familiar with the concept of what it's trying to accomplish. And I think I may have a use case for it at work.
Oh.
So I'm going to put this in my CI/CD process and see if it solves a problem for me, because currently we're on an Ubuntu server base and we cannot go to 2204. We're going to have to find another OS. And this may be an option for us. So I think I'll be testing it out and see if it runs our in-house software.
Well, that's very exciting. I hope you will share with the class in a future date how it works out, whether it does or doesn't, just for fun.
Absolutely.
All right. Sravan, let's say you're going down the stairs into the basement to do your laundry. And some stranger pops in the side door and says, "Hey, why should I try Clear Linux OS?"
You gave everyone else a crazy scenario, but you couldn't come up with one for the Linja? Really?
Well, I failed. What can we say?
Next week is going to be bizarre, crazy, out of the world. So you have to come next week and get your scenario double.
I came up with a very bad pun. Would I suggest them to stay clear of Clear Linux? Stay clear of extremely bad pun, I know, but
stay clear.
Yeah, I haven't tried. I personally stayed clear of it again because I don't think it's that useful to try it in a VM.
Okay.
But again, I think hardware optimizations and all these like kernel optimizations are good, but not for normal users. Like a niche use case, which most people don't need to bother over it. Just run Ubuntu or whatever. Like I don't think it's but if you really care about it, then it's for you. Like go ahead and use it. But it's for most people, it's like just go ahead, just use what you're using. There's no need to switch. But again, that's the problem with niche distros. It's like it's for a very specific use case, and people who fit that use case, who want the use case, will really appreciate it. But again, that's not me.
Okay, that's fair. Jinda, so you are coming home from work and you stop at a dive bar to have a soda pop. I don't know why you stopped at a dive bar, but I'm not going to accuse you of anything else. And while you're sitting there, someone says to you, while you're sipping on your soda pop, "Why should I try Clear Linux OS?"
I'm going to say if you want a very fast operating system, this is probably one of the best ones I've ever used in speed. It really is. The unfortunate part is half of it didn't work, but that's neither here nor there.
That's fair. Prophetic. You are in a mall, and as the door is closing in the elevator, we're going to go to the top floor of this rather large mall, let's say Mall of America. A murderous clown hops in,
Oh snap!
and as he's about to do a murderous thing to you, he stops and says, "Wait, I saw you in Linux Saloon. What do you think of Clear Linux OS? Should I try it, and why?"
I would say, don't kill me. You should try it and give us your thoughts at the next Linux Saloon, so that I can hopefully spare my life. That'll be my way out. But I didn't try it, so I will say, like, let's try it together, because I heard it's speedy and fast and has awesome password controls I'm trying to install.
I think that's fair. I don't know if I'd want to try it together with him. I'd probably throw my laptop and run away.
Oh yeah, no, I'll wait for him to step out the elevator, kick him in the back, and then close the elevator as fast as I can.
Oh, okay. Beep, beep, beep,
That'll
beep.
be my exit
Yeah.
strategy.
Better shove him hard.
Yeah.
But cool. Scrapjaw. I'm going to give you a similar thing. But a murderous clown with a bass guitar comes to you. And he's getting ready to strike you in the face with it, but then notices that you are on Linux Saloon and decides to stop and ask you what you thought of Clear Linux OS. What would you say to him?
I'd say if you have maybe some home assistant type things that you want to do, or you want to run Octopi and you want to run all these home IT things, this, of all the things that I've seen you guys look into or we've looked into that have container type setups and security, this is the one that seems like it would be the best case scenario for trying to do a box that can kind of maybe manage a bunch of that stuff all in one, maybe. Well, because not IT, but like Internet of Things stuff you want to keep secure. And if it's looking for CVEs and they're keeping up the tabs on that, how many people are out there actually checking into that all the time? And how many devices do you want to have running some kind of server and having to update individually each one of them, right? So maybe, and that's just for me looking through their website and what kind of things they've got here, and having listened to you guys talk about it tonight, it's like that might be a thing for me to try, because I've tried putting Octopi on some old hardware that I had that was, well, it was a netbook, so we'll call it hardware issues on that one. An Intel add-on, that thing was garbage. But I kind of want to integrate some things, and I might put this on a box I've got sitting here that has a little bit of horsepower, and play with that.
Yeah, I think if you do end up doing that, do share with how that goes, because I'm interested in seeing if there are any good use cases by anybody on Clear Linux OS that they've actually found and implemented. So on a Linux Ninja and you, if you do end up doing anything like that, Scrap, that'd be awesome. Would be awesome.
I think I know why you didn't give Linux Ninja a scenario, because no one would find a ninja, would they?
It's true. Good point. I like that. Let's go with that.
Scrap, you brought up, is my audio working fine? I feel like I
Yeah.
broke
Yeah,
something.
you're good.
No, you're
Okay,
good.
cool. The lights turned on and I'm scared. So
Just mean
all
hello.
my light bulbs, yeah, all my light bulbs in my house performed firmware updates yesterday. So for about 5 minutes, the entire house was this weird shade of yellow. So I love the internet. IoT everything.
It's a beautiful, tragic thing and
It
exciting
was a
all
good
at once.
time. It was so weird. I was like, everything looked like, all the colors looked so weird. It was great.
I like it. All right. So I would say, if nobody has a scenario for me, I would say if you like to drive a Linux distribution much like a drag racer, where it is fast and dangerous and you might smash things and possibly lose your life, Clear Linux OS is the distribution for you.
Living life on the fast
Well
lane.
said.
That's right. All right, so for our next distro exploration, I don't have one yet, but if you'd like to have any suggestions on that, you can go to suggestions@linuxsaloon.com, send one of those fancy electronic messages to me, or you can tag distro exploration in Telegram, Matrix, or Discord. You can send me a direct message on Discord or Telegram, Matrix, Telegram, or Discord, and I'd love to put it in the list. For next week, we have an open mic night, so anything goes. If you want me to put something specific on the agenda, again, suggestions@linuxsaloon.com, or you can send me a message on the any of those other
Telegram.
systems. Telegram's great. It's still my favorite. I don't care what anybody says because of the stickers. I like animated stickers. That's just really why it is. I like using the lizard. That's kind of like the OpenSUSE, gecko or chameleon kind of. I just like it. So anyway, also for some housekeeping, I want to start pushing the community free pour section. So if somebody has a project they're working on, if you have something you want to talk about on Linux Saloon, like have a specific thing, I'd like to carve out some time for you. So this week we're going to do Sravan in just a little bit, but in the future, I'd like to feature different people in the community. So if you got something, please send me a message. I would like to put you on the schedule. So there you go. All right, so now time for some news. So I'm going to muddle our way through some Linux news. I know we're running late, but I started super late, so here we go. A big thanks to Michael from This Week in Linux for mixing up a great flight of topics. And first, the one I want to talk about is a little bit of application drama, because who doesn't like drama? We're going to talk about GNOME's new telemetry tool. GNOME has recently launched a new telemetry app called GNOME Info Collect that collects anonymous information about your system and some choices you have made on your system, like the default browser. Now, I would like to say telemetry is not automatically a bad thing. Telemetry just means automatic collections of information with some use of technology. The process can be done both ethically and unethically, but unfortunately, this term is associated with the unethical part more often than ethical. So let's talk about what kind of data this application collects. This new program collects your Linux distro and version, hardware OEM, model CPU, etc. If Flatpak and FlatHub are installed or enabled, favorite applications, those pinned to the dock, GNOME extensions installed, your default browser, unique ID, or also machine ID. It's salted hashed of machine ID plus username. So I don't know exactly what that is, technical understanding of that, but there we go. There's a lot of information in this list, but no personal identifiable information, not even country data. The most important thing to know is that this tool is not pre-installed in GNOME or in any distros, so you'll have to manually install it and run it to participate in the data. In some cases, people will say that opt-in is a good thing, and depending on how much information is sent, then I tend to agree, but there's another thing I think should be considered. The data in this will be heavily skewed, requiring user to know about this app, install it, and run it, and it guarantees that the data will be heavily skewed in various ways. Opt-in sounds like a better choice than a separate application to be installed, but it's not really. In my opinion, the best version would be to have opt-out, very basic amount of data such as distro, unique ID, and then opt-in for more data that can be presented in an option during the install or after the install in the system setup process. This topic is a bit complex and probably not something that we should go into a whole lot of detail, but what do you think of GNOME collecting telemetry? Do you think this is a first step? Like they might go beyond that? Or what do you think of GNOME even doing this at all? Do you think this is a waste of time and effort if they're not even installing it by default? Yeah, go ahead, Schykle.
So, in a lot of cases, GNOME gets criticism for having weird design decisions, and a lot of that criticism is based on the premise that quote unquote GNOME doesn't ask real users what they want and other things like that. There's a lot of people who think that GNOME just sort of does things without actually sort of looking into anything. So I think this is a pretty good thing in terms of like, hey, like here is your ability to, if you want, like send us information on how your system is used so we can see how it's deployed in the real world in various sort of circumstances, and then go from there. It's also, I think what's really cool about it, because this is like an app that you install. It's not in every repo yet, but I do believe it's being worked on in Fedora already, so it'll end up in there eventually. I think it's a good thing. I think it's important for anonymized system data to be able to be sort of read, or not read, but sort of analyzed. So that way you can sort of see, let's say there's like a feature you don't really expose. Everybody goes and finds a way to turn that on. Let's say if it's the it's like double click in KDE. But no, I think it is important to see how the products you're using are being used by real people.
Now, because they're not installing it by default, it's not even an opt-in or opt-out or anything like that. Only certain people are going to install it. So what do you think that group of people would be that would install it? Obviously it's probably GNOME fans are probably going to install it. People who are very interested in the project. Someone like you would probably install it, I'm guessing, to give them as much information possible to help improve the project.
Oh yeah.
Do you think any of the data they're proposing to collect sounds threatening at all?
I don't. I won't pretend to understand the security model of how data is sent via this application or stored on GNOME servers. I would like to believe that they are using decent security practices and hygiene, and that none of the data is just sitting on a server in plain text, including your IP and where it came from. I don't actually know how that's being handled. I haven't actually looked that closely at it. I've just installed it and run it because that's how I roll. Assuming they are using solid security practices, though, no, I don't think this data is anything that that is of concern. And I think the fact that it's completely optional, like something you have to explicitly do, is even more of a case for that.
I would like to know what the frequency is of the data being sent. If it's every time the system boots up, if it's daily, weekly, monthly, or if it checks for if there are changes to the system. Like I'd like to know that piece of information before I would allow that. Like, love KDE and Plasma. I use it all the time. If they propose the telemetry project to help with it, maybe it might help with the focus of what to work on. That's how I look at it.
Oh, it already exists. It's built into the system settings in KDE. It's already there.
Well, what I'm saying is I would want to know before I turn anything on.
Oh.
What is the frequency? What is the exact list of things? There's some data that I do allow to be collected on different applications and whatnot. But I'm curious to know then that for me it's the frequency that really concerns me at this point.
That makes a lot of sense.
What's the name of this app? What was the name of the app? Sorry. Is there a name for the app?
Yeah, there is. Give me 1 second here. It is called GNOME-info-collect or TAC or what you call it. All right.
So
I think I saw a notification about this on the Fedora forums or whatever. I think it's going to be included in the next Fedora soon. I'm not sure if I think there are discussions going on. I'm not following it carefully, but there is a possibility.
In regards to data privacy, they do note on their blog post about it that things like IP information is not kept, it's discarded immediately. I don't know by what means they do that, if logging is completely disabled on the network side, or if they just manually flush that, but that is good to know. Let me actually go ahead and check on frequency for you. I think I can actually figure this out.
I couldn't find anything on telemetry in my Plasma install under feedback or...
I don't remember where it is in the settings, but it's in there somewhere, and there's like a slider that lets you control what type of data is being sent as well. It might be in about, I don't remember, maybe it's in feedback, but I do remember seeing it there. It might not be in Tumbleweed. I don't know if that's like an optional thing that like a module that you have to install, but It was there for me in Kubuntu, KDE Neon, Manjaro KDE, as well as Fedora KDE.
So there's user feedback in Plasma settings. In that you can control, but the default is disabled.
Yeah.
And because Plasma settings is so huge, I don't think anyone will find it.
Yeah, I don't see any of that in the system settings for me, so it may not be installed by default.
Just search for TELE. That's what I did. It's like it just showed up in something called user feedback. So it's not called telemetry, but it's called user feedback. And they have a privacy policy. I will not bother to read it right now.
I don't have that installed in my system, so it's not there.
So I'm no code monkey, but I did just read through the entire client for the GNOME data collection thing. It's only like 400 lines of code. And if you've already uploaded it, it just doesn't. So it's like a one-time thing. Basically, it creates like a with like the name of an ID of your machine, creates it just hashes that, so it creates like a unique sort of unique ID. If you've already sent it, it's not going to take it. It's like you've done your part. Goodbye.
Oh, okay.
So
it's a one-time, one-shot
yeah, it's
deal.
not just constantly collecting data.
So if there are hardware changes, I wonder if that would change any information on that.
As
Let's
long
say
as
you
if
add
it's
RAM.
just like it would stay the same, I think.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's interesting. Well, cool. Thanks for looking that up. Much appreciated. I do want to get to our community free pour. So for the community free pour, Sravan, I know you've talked about this before, and you did mildly protest in the message that you had with me, but you wrote an article on distributed compiling on your blog, and just for the sake of the class, if you want to like share some of the the little bits here, I'm gonna have that in the show description when this goes on to Linux Saloon YouTube page. But I'd like you to talk a little bit about the article you wrote and the important pieces of the article and what inspired you to write that.
So I think last month I talked about I was building packages in ARM using distributed compiling because again ARM machines are mostly weak. So if you want to build something like a Linux kernel, it'll take like 2 hours to just build a kernel. And I wanted to do whatever I can to speed it up. So I explored using distributed compiling to do that. And the solution I finally landed on after trying many things is Ice Cream, which is again developed by OpenSUSE. And that's what they use to build the packages on their infrastructure. I don't know exactly how they implement it, but OpenSUSE uses Ice Cream on the infrastructure to build packages.
So do you know, did you install a vanilla version of Ice Cream?
Yeah, so the thing about Arch is everything is vanilla. So everything is upstream. So most packages are just built upstream. So yeah, it's a vanilla Ice Cream. And it's actually an AUR package. It's not in repos. It's an AUR package.
Is it more of a golden vanilla or like a French vanilla? I'm asking for a friend.
Chocolate vanilla.
Well, that's very cool. So now when you have multiple, how many ARM-based devices do you have as part of this distributed compiling node?
So currently I have just one more ARM. So the thing about distributed compiling is that you have to run it like on a ARM-based system, and then you can add volunteers, which can include either ARM-based systems or x64 systems. So currently in my cluster, I have 3 computers.
Okay.
One is an x64 computer and 2 are ARM computers. And one is a Raspberry Pi, and the main computer I run my builds on is an Override. So it's actually, my blog describes like my reasoning about why I choose Ice Cream. The most common option is distc. It's almost universal. Almost all distributions have it in their like the build infrastructures. But I detail why I choose Ice Cream over distc. And then I just go through some of the setups, but it's mostly Arch specific, but it's the same logic can be followed in other distros too. Ice Cream is there in open source, obviously, because it's their thing, but I'm not sure if how well it runs on Fedora or Ubuntu, but I think the instructions should be very similar regarding how to use and enable it. And if you want to do cross-compiling, which I do, i.e. compiling ARM on x64, you need slightly more steps, but as far as I know, the cross-compiler toolchains are there in Debian repos. So if it is there in Debian repos, I assume it's there in Ubuntu repos. I'm not sure, but it should be there. So it's like the method I describe is sort of universal. Maybe the syntaxes will be slightly different according to your distro, but the logic will be the same.
You notice, is it like a linear or more of a logarithmic performance increase? So like 2 ARM devices that cut your time in half, or is it more of a like a certain percentage?
It's mostly a percentage, and the best results is like you have a really powerful x64 computer, and then what you can do is disable compiling on your ARM. Even though you build on ARM, you can disable compiling there, and you just utilize your powerful x64 computer for just compiling. I think, and that's the best solution. Like I haven't done benchmarks, but other people have, and that's what they found the best. But if you have several computers, it's not linear. It depends on how many jobs you put on the distributed compiling, like make flags. Like if you say J21, you're putting 21 jobs, but it depends on number of cores also in the cluster. So you have to do a lot of tweaking to get the optimized solution, but I'm not looking for an optimized solution. I'm just trying to make it faster. But
that's fair.
Yeah, currently what setup I have works for me, but you can, if you want to experiment a little bit more, you can optimize it. Like basically controlling the number of jobs in that system and also controlling the number of make flags, what you said in your building tool. In Arch, it's make package. So in Arch, it's very easy to build packages. You just need a build script called package build, and you run make package and you get a package. So the way I've set it up right now is like the ice cream is in my path. So anytime make package is called, it automatically uses ice cream instead of the GCC, which is there in my computer. So it automatically uses distributed compiling for all packageables, even though if I'm using an AUR helper, even in that case, it automatically uses ice cream. So my updates are faster now.
Well, it's good news. So it is successful.
It was a like unintended consequence. Like my updates are faster. That was totally unintended because like it's working for normal make package, so it should work everywhere. So
that is cool. That is neat. All right, so there will be a link in the show notes or whatever the description.
I can also post it in the YouTube chat if people want to take a look. It's sort of niche.
Well, it's
not for everyone.
It is, but I think it's a very important thing that you've accomplished, and now you now understand. So you're an expert in the area for distributed compiling, and so it's nice to have. Well, you're more of an expert than I am.
Yeah.
So it's something that can be gone to.
Actually, a lot of things, a lot of options. Like I've said, I use Ccache. Again, Ccache is very commonly implemented. It's compiler cache.
Mm-hmm.
It's there in many distros, but it seems Mozilla has developed something called SC cache. So you can use Amazon Web Service as a cache and other cloud-based services. And I haven't even bothered to explain with those because I don't have accounts in those things. But it's like, I just touched the iceberg, but people who really know about these things, it's like, you can make this much faster, but I'm not enough of an expert to bother exploring, and my use case is not there. Like I build a kernel maybe, like when I'm experimenting with kernels, I maybe build it often, but once I have something which works, I build it maybe once every 2 weeks or 3 weeks. So I don't care that much.
I still think it's very cool, and I want to congratulate you for that. Just to sum up, I think it's a very neat article. I read through it. I think that if you have any interest in compiling or building software and doing it like in a distributed fashion, I think this is very interesting and that you should check it out. I think Sravan did a good job writing it up. I think it's very clear, something that can be followed. So Thank you,
So
Sravan.
one more use case, like I use it on ARM, but if you have a bunch of computers lying like Schykle, you can if you are building packages, it's like you'll find it like really interesting. Like you'll play around with it. It's like that's why at the end of my blog I wrote compile responsibly. It's like
Right.
it seems some people have used this, like implemented this in their office computers, and like the good thing about Ice Cream is that it distributes load, but this CC doesn't. It seems there have been sword fights in offices. Like if you read my resources, at the bottom, it's like there's an article about prevent office sword fights using Ice Cream instead of using this CC. But it's like if you have a bunch of computers idling around doing nothing, you can use them.
Yeah,
and if you're building packages, obviously.
Right.
If you're just downloading for repos, you don't need them.
Right. Makes sense. And it's very cool. All right. Well, it's closing time. So there's some stuff that we can plug. So Rick, you are not a Linux guru. What is the second G?
Right.
NLGG.
Guy.
Not Linux guru. Guy. Okay.
Guy. Yeah.
Now you are doing Saturday streams now instead of Wednesday.
Yeah, I'm soon Saturday. Probably gonna have to go to 11 o'clock.
Okay.
I've been doing it 10 o'clock Mountain Time to 11 o'clock Mountain Time.
Okay.
'Cause I need more room between when my son and everything leaves the house and when I start the show. More time prep. So anyway. But next week I'll probably be doing Reborn OS more than likely, unless something else comes along that makes me go, oh.
Reborn OS.
Yeah, eye candy.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, very cool. All right, so 10 or 11 o'clock Mountain Time. You probably put a link to your show. Jinda, thank you very much for the link to his stream, his channel, so for his streams. Destination Linux is streaming live tomorrow afternoon, 1 p.m. Eastern, so check that out. Steve's very own. Maybe, do we know if he's streaming tomorrow? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure his is up already. I'm pretty sure.
Okay, that's good.
I did see him pop up in YouTube.
And then Linux User Space, there should be another episode dropping tomorrow, I believe. So I don't know if you heard the last one, but they did talk about Linux Saloon in that one, so that was pretty cool. All right, I'm also part of a podcast called Linux Out Loud. If you'd like to check that out, it releases every Wednesday, and this next one that's released on Wednesday, we talk about the new digital divide concerning ISPs. I also have a site called cubiclenet.com. I do things sometimes. So Linux Saloon is part of the Tux Digital Network. You can check out more great shows at tuxdigital.com. I want to thank you all for being a part of the conversation in both the Zoom meeting and the YouTube stream, as well as everyone for watching the show after the fact. I want to thank everyone involved in making the Linux and open source tools possible for us to not only have this conversation, but also to have fun and enjoy our technology. Linux truly puts personal back in our personal computers. Thank you for stopping by. Be sure to tip your developers, and please remember to Linux responsibly. Until next time, see yous.
Later.
Bye.
I had a all of a sudden something just started playing in the background very fast, and I don't know what happened. That's something I got to cut out. Anyway, yeah, a little phlegmy there. All right, got to cut that out too. What do you say?
Sorry, I've got the bug there. I was going to say,
Clear links. Wow, words.
Oh, I lost you after server OS. Oh, we can just
There's no
leave it there.
desktop.
I'll be in one.
Hey, Rick,
So I don't-
you have to turn up your volume a little bit.
Okay.
The alternative
try.
can't hear you. So,
Yeah.
and I can't. I'm hard of hearing. So,
Yeah.
and a
I'll
little
try
bit,
and talk louder.
and a little bit slow.
Oh, ow. Hey, sorry. Just gonna.
yep.
I have one.
Oh, yeah, go on, Rick. You can go first if you
No,
want.
you go ahead.
All right, okay.
Whatever.
You're muted, Nate.
That's because I was sneezing.